Today we're talking about that time that one of NASCAR's most legendary cheaters tried his hand at the Indianapolis 500 and created one of the most insane race cars ever built. The Indianapolis 500 is no stranger to weird race cars. You had the early winged cars, you had cars powered by diesel engines, and you even had cars that swapped out internal combustion for jet engines. Yep, this thing actually raced and was winning the race with 8 miles to go when its transmission sort of failed. But for my money, the strangest car to ever attempt to race in the greatest spectacle in racing was the brainchild of this guy. If you're into motorsports history, you'll undoubtedly recognize this man. It is Smokey Yunick, and he is one of motorsports' greatest mechanics, engineers, innovators, and sometimes operating beyond the bounds of the rulebook. His most famous creation was this Chevelle. It had every last little detail poured over to be as fast as possible in the Daytona 500. After earning the ire of the NASCAR officials, Smokey drove this car off the inspection stand without a fuel tank in it.
Goodbye, losers!
Turns out the car had an 11-foot long, 2-inch wide fuel line that in and of itself could hold 2 gallons of fuel. Turns out Yunick wasn't just a NASCAR guy. He tried his hand at Indianapolis multiple times. That winged car from earlier, that was Smokey's idea. The wing was brilliant at creating downforce. Unfortunately, that meant the car was pinned at the red line lap after lap after lap, and engines, well, they just don't really like that. And then there's this thing, which, Smokey built and tried to qualify for the 1964 Indianapolis 500. See, back then there weren't rules dictating how much fuel you could carry in your car, so most teams just carried enough fuel to go the entire race distance. The downside to this was that as fuel burned off, you lost a lot of weight, and this upset the balance of the car. This car was Smokey's attempt to try to keep the weight in a place where it wouldn't affect the balance as much as some of the other cars. There's no denying that this was a pretty innovative design back in the day. However, not so innovative was the fact that this thing used a lot of parts off of, a Pontiac Tempest. The front suspension and the brakes were straight off of the Tempest, and this would prove to be the car's fatal flaw. See, those Tempest brakes were very temperamental and would tend to, well, just grab suddenly if you applied too much brake pressure. I'm by no means an expert, but it seems to me that if you have brakes that are either on or off and nothing really in between, that's not really going to be a good time for anyone involved. And wouldn't you know it, during qualifying, the car entered turn 1 a little too fast. Driver Bobby Johns applied a little too much brake pressure, locking up the front brakes, sending it into a spin, and eventually into the wall. The team didn't have enough time to repair the car for another run, so this ended their attempt at the race, and it would never attempt to qualify for the 500 ever again.